It's not as certain these days, so we have to go back.
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. The US Justice Department releases 3 million pages, 180,000 images and 2,000 videos linked to Jeffrey Epstein. The release comes after a missed legal deadline, with officials saying it ends a major review to ensure transparency. Iran says it is ready for fair and equitable talks with the United States as regional tensions continue to rise. President Donald Trump refuses to rule out military action, while Tehran says negotiations cannot occur under threats. Thousands protests in the US state of Minneapolis, and students walk out nationwide demanding federal immigration agents leave Minnesota. The US action follows fatal shootings and comes as the Trump administration signals mixed messages on de-escalation. Washington approves $6.67 billion in arms sales to Israel amid a fragile Gaza ceasefire. The package includes 30 Apache attack helicopters and infantry assault vehicles, according to the State Department. More than 200 people are killed in a collapse at the Ribaya coltan mine in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The site produces around 15% of the world's coltan and has been under M23 rebel control since 2024. The United Nations warns it could run out of money by July as member states fail to pay their fees. The warning comes after the United States withholds funding and other countries fall into arrears. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez announces an amnesty bill that could free hundreds of political detainees. The ruling party-led assembly is set to fast-track the measure. China conducts naval and air patrols around Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea. The feature is claimed by Beijing but lies within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. For our top story, we head to the United States, and multiple emails released as part of the latest Epstein files between Jeffrey Epstein and Larry Summers, the former US Treasury Secretary and Harvard University president, show the two men gossiping about the president, Donald Trump, during his first presidential term. In a 2017 email, Summers asked how guilty Trump was, suggesting Russian interference in the 2016 election. Epstein replied, saying he did not understand how dumb Trump is. The two also discussed Trump's mental state and his foreign policy, with Epstein defending Trump's record on Israel and India. These emails come after previous documents showing years of correspondence between the two. Summers has since expressed shame over the connection with Epstein. Of course, this situation is ongoing as those 3 million emails, those 180,000 images and 2,000 videos continue to be sieved through by media all around the world. We'll continue, of course, to bring you all that information as it trickles through the headlines. We move on now. Now over to Eastern Europe, and the Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, is set to travel to Miami. He will meet with members of the US President Donald Trump's administration to discuss a possible settlement between Russia and Ukraine. Trump says a deal may be within reach, but adds that deep hostility between him and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has complicated negotiations. Meanwhile, Zelensky reports that Russian forces largely held back from striking Ukraine's energy facilities overnight. The Kremlin announced a week-long pause in attacks on Kyiv at Trump's request, though Russia is now targeting logistics hubs and key stations. Let's listen into what the Ukrainian president had to say.
Дякую американській стороні за зусилля, щоб в цей час зупинити удари по енергетиці, і сподіваємось, що Америці вдасться це забезпечити. Є сьогодні заява президента Сполучених Штатів. Ситуація зараз вночі та цими днями, реальна ситуація на наших об'єктах енергетики, у наших містах це покаже. Найбільш складно, як і раніше в Києві, тим більше проблеми з опаленням. Без тепла в Києві більше, ніж 450 багатоквартирних будинків в кількох районах. Більшість з них – це після ударів.
Joining us now to discuss the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe is Professor Georgi Tolaraya. He's a professor at the Russia Academy of Science. He joins us live. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor. It's a pleasure to speak to you. Why is Vladimir Putin sending Kirill Dmitriev here rather than a senior diplomat or a foreign minister level to meet the Trump team in Miami? And of course, leading up to those talks in tomorrow, another round of trilateral talks is getting underway in Abu Dhabi. What are your hopes for that?
Well, first about Dmitriev, he has been long the head man for the Ukrainian talks, because so far it's not the job of diplomats. Diplomats do iron out the agreements and make them conform to the international law. But the deal is made sometimes, and history shows us, through other people close to the leaders. That's the leaders' agreement, the general deal which should be achieved without too much diplomatic procedures. So far, I can only judge by the American and the Ukrainian side statements, because Russian side declines to comment on the ongoing talks, and this is right. And they said that 90% are agreed on, but the remaining 10% they are the make or deal or break the deal. Because as far as I understand, they can show the territorial issue, and Russia won't agree to any concessions to its previous position on that, and maybe some other issues. So Dmitriev is obviously going to Miami to discuss it, and this gives us some hope. That the solution to the conflict is now closer than ever before. But again, I would warn against too much optimism. Although President Putin have made a concession by agreeing to the request by President Trump to stop the strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, especially energy infrastructure. And of course, it's good news from the humanitarian point of view, because I pity very much with the Kyiv citizens who have to bear this cold and a lack of electricity. But they're not the object. They're not the object of Russia's strike. Russia wants to stop the energy supply to military production facilities and for the military infrastructure. And obviously, the consequence also includes the cities, although they're not the target. But anyway, this is the concession on the Russian side.
Okay.
And this concession is made in hope for some flexibility on the Ukrainian and American side. Let's see what will go on in Miami.
Indeed. And of course, Trump is saying hostility with the Ukrainian president is complicating these negotiations, and especially going into tomorrow. That'll be interesting to see what happens. But Russia is reportedly held back from striking energy facilities overnight, truce which is said to be a week long. Do you think that represents genuine restraint or calculated signaling from the Kremlin?
Well, I've said this is a concession, because otherwise we should have continued to strike the energy infrastructure, because it looks pretty effective, since both Zelensky and Trump beg us to stop it. That means that this is effective, but we are stopping it, and this is a concession. This is sort of advance payment for the future deal. from Russian side. If it's not reciprocated, then this winter truce won't last till the next till month of February.
Professor Toloraya, thank you very much for taking the time in joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you on these issues. We now turn over to the US once again, and the US Senate passed a crucial $1.2 trillion spending bill on January the 30th, aiming to prevent a government shutdown and fund essential agencies through September. The measure, which includes a 2-week extension for Homeland Security, comes amid rising tensions over immigration policies. Demonstrations in cities like Minneapolis and Denver protesting ICE's role in federal immigration enforcement have added urgency to the debate. While President Trump endorsed the deal, Senate Democrats and Republicans remain divided on the future of DHS funding. The next challenge comes as the House of Representatives, out of session until February the 2nd, faces a critical vote to finalize the deal. Ross Feingold. Okay, hopefully Ross Feingold joins us in just a second. Of course, a crucial bill has been passed through the Senate, a $1.2 trillion spending bill aiming to prevent another huge government shutdown, which we, of course, have seen previously for over a month last year. This measure, of course, which includes a 2-week extension for Homeland Security, comes amid rising tensions over these immigration policies. Ross Feingold joins us now to discuss this issue. Ross, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. Is this a significant development that the Senate has passed this $1.2 trillion spending bill, which of course would see government workers from being suspended from pay once again? The House is out of session until February the 2nd. However, we'll of course talk about that when that occurs. But what is the significance of this, especially given the political tensions in the United States at this current moment?
I think the significance here is the Democrats, more so than the Republicans, they don't want to be blamed for a government shutdown. So the Democrats have a number of issues over which they have strenuous disagreement with the Republicans and the Trump administration. They do have the option of holding out and not passing the funding bills for the government agencies, which would result in a government shutdown, just like what occurred last year. But there is a political price to do that, and it's a debate. The Democrats internally, this is a significant area of disagreement amongst themselves. Some say we need to hold out for our priorities, and others say no, the political cost of doing that and bringing the government to another shutdown would be tremendous. So it appears for now that a sufficient number of Democrats have taken the view that it's too dangerous for them to risk paying a political price of a government shutdown. Thus, they've agreed to fund these government agencies, avoid a shutdown, but it comes at the expense of some of their own supporters saying you don't have the courage of your convictions.
And Ross, to what extent is the immigration policy influencing lawmakers on both sides of the aisle when it comes to decisions like this?
Again, for the Democrats, one of their priorities is to either reduce funding or write into the law that funds the Department of Homeland Security restrictions and specific instructions, for lack of a better description, as to what these government agencies can do when they are enforcing the immigration laws. So they had the option of holding out, and some of them decided not to. And again, some of the Democrats have just basically given up on forcing changes with how the Trump administration conducts immigration enforcement. But we should be absolutely clear, even if there was a reduction in funding, even if some new wording was added into the legislation, such as what agents or officers can do when they're literally on the streets enforcing the immigration law, how they interact with the public, et cetera, Generally speaking, that will not change the Trump administration's approach. The Trump administration will continue to surge federal officers in different locations around the country as they continue their efforts to detain and deport people who are in the country illegally.
Ross Feingold, do stay with us as we move on to another related development. And the US State Department has approved more than $6.5 billion in potential military sales to Israel. This includes a $1.98 billion sale for joint light tactical vehicles, a $3.8 billion deal for AH-64E Apache helicopters, and $740 million for other equipment. Meanwhile, the General LLC will provide the vehicles, while Boeing and Lockheed Martin will deliver the helicopters. These deals are part of the US's ongoing support to enhance Israel's defense capabilities. The Pentagon made the announcement on January the 30th in separate statements confirming the approval of those key contracts. Ross Feingold joins us once again. What's Washington signaling here, Ross? $6.5 billion to Israel in military aid at this moment.
The signal is the relationship between the Trump administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu is excellent. So even though in the period after President Trump took office and before there was a ceasefire in Gaza, there were sometimes indications that relations between the two leaders had frayed a little bit, wasn't as strong as it was in the first Trump administration. And frankly, that's just completely not true. The ceasefire arrangement, broadly speaking, was a good deal for Israel. The Trump administration isn't supporting punishing or sanctioning Israel over civilian deaths or any type of human rights or war crimes accusations that other countries have made against Israel. And the Trump administration clearly continues to approve new weapon sales to Israel. So the relationship between the two governments, between the two leaders, is I would call it close to 100% aligned at the moment.
Of course, the dissatisfaction, unfavorable view of Israel within the American public has increased drastically in the Democratic Party, but also drastically on the Republican side as well. How contentious are these deals likely to be in Congress and, of course, with the American public as well?
In Congress, it's probably not likely to be contentious, although a growing number of Democrats in Congress and a very small number of Republicans have become more vocal in their criticism of Israel in recent years than compared to decades earlier or any time before the war began in Gaza in October 2023. But generally, I would say the overwhelming majority of members of Congress from both parties continue to support a close U.S.-Israel relationship, and specifically a close U.S.-Israel security relationship, including the sale of weapons by the United States to Israel. So I expect there to be some voices of criticism in Congress, but that will be a small number of people. It will not change the outcome here. As for the public, yes, there will be criticism in the public, whether that's online or scholars, foreign policy experts, people in the media, and specifically the more progressive media outlets, whether that's online or on television. But it will not affect the Trump administration's decision-making, whether on this specific issue or on other aspects of the bilateral U.S.-Israel relationship. So even if there's public criticism of Israel or a growing amount of public criticism of Israel, I think it's safe to say that in the near to midterm, the Trump administration will continue its policy of broadly supporting Israel.
As you've said, Ross, this is nothing new, but Donald Trump is now heading a board of peace, of course, which aims to de-escalate the war in Gaza and advocates for peace in the Middle East and in broader terms, of course. Do you think this could complicate Washington's relationships with partners for pushing for de-escalation in Gaza and the wider region, particularly those states which the Trump administration has particularly warmed to, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, among others who advocate for Palestinian rights?
That's a really interesting question. And I think the short answer is no, this is not an issue. And one reason for that may simply be that some of the countries you mentioned, and specifically the countries that are the stakeholders in where we go from here in Gaza, and that is Egypt and the Gulf countries. All of those countries also want to buy U.S. weapons. So they really, frankly, cannot criticize the Trump administration for a large weapon sale to Israel when those countries also want the Trump administration to approve weapon sales to their countries. So, the answer to your question, frankly, is no. This weapon sale is not going to really have a negative effect on how the Board of Peace operates or those countries that are the key stakeholders in the Board of Peace with regard to where we go from here on reconstructing Gaza.
And do you think arms sales like these leverage U.S. influence over Israel or reduce it?
Over time, the U.S. might lose some of that leverage. And the reason why I say that is Israel has a very, very good domestic arms industry. It continues to grow. It continues to improve its capabilities as to what it can manufacture domestically. But there are still a lot of items that clearly Israel must buy from the United States and sometimes buys from other countries as well, although Israel is also a growing seller around the world. So maybe over time, the U.S. might lose some of that leverage because Israel will continue to develop its domestic weapons manufacturing capabilities. But at the moment, when we're in a situation where the Trump administration is very much aligned with Israel, very much supports arming Israel, there's just not an issue. There's no problem here. The United States is not seeking to use this leverage in ways that would force the Netanyahu government to change any policies.
Ross Feingold, thank you very much for taking the time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here on The Broadcast. We turn now over to some news from the space industry. And according to sources, SpaceX generated about $8 billion profit last year, with revenues between $15 billion to $16 billion. The company's satellite internet service, Starlink, is a key driver of this success, accounting for a significant portion of its revenue. SpaceX's rapid satellite expansion has made it the world's largest satellite operator, with over 9 million users. The company is also reportedly in talks with Elon Musk's AI company, XAI, about a potential merger ahead of its planned IPO. If the IPO goes ahead, it could raise more than $50 billion, with a valuation exceeding $1.5 trillion. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.